Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Mel, your host, and this is the Love Manual. The Love Manual is a podcast where we get advice and tips from professionals, viewers, and our listeners on love and relationships. Please do not forget to subscribe and on YouTube and share and like us on Facebook. We would appreciate it. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Miss Davondra Brown. She is a sexual health and wellness professional who specializes in educating and helping professionals integrate sexual wellness into their current practices. And she is also a speaker, a consultant, and a coach. And she is a pleasure and a joy to have on the show. Please help me welcome Miss Davondra Brown. Hello, Davondra.
Hey Mel, how are you?
I'm fine,
Hello.
thank you. How you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate this. And, like I was telling my spouse, you are such an amazing person. And
Oh,
everything that you do for others and for the community is such a pleasure. I know that they're just totally in love with you and your personality because you exude happiness. So I know that you shine on those that you help. Let me ask a quick
oh.
question. I'm sorry.
No, I was just about to say, oh, you make me feel good. Thank you so much for showering me with those compliments. I appreciate
Oh
it.
no. You deserve them, but I do want to ask how you are holding up during the pandemic.
Breathing,
Oh,
breathing through it. We are doing good as a family, I must say. I've lost a few friends and people that I know. I have also had a number of people that I know who have suffered through it and survived. So we're holding up. It's difficult. It's been good to, be blessed to be able to do something I love and work from home and not have to be, in close proximity to other people all the time. So I'm holding up, but definitely prayerful for other people that don't necessarily have these luxuries and privileges, and just staying, just cognizant of how much this is impacting all of us. So.
yes, I agree 100%. And it is really good that you can work from home and you
Mhm.
enjoy what you do and you are
Yeah.
staying safe and healthy. That's really important. So
Yeah.
kudos to you and your profession.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I wish the country would take it more as the health crisis that it is,
Yes.
and I feel like they've over politicized it and taking away from the fact that this really is a public health issue, and that the things right now that we know, because I can't say the only thing, it's the things that we
Mhm.
know
Right.
that we should be doing, which is social distancing and mask wearing. And, that's just it. Right now, it's all we have. It's important. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have serious, consistent working
Right.
treatments. So, we just got to do the best we can where we are. So,
Absolutely. I agree
yeah.
100%. For the listeners and the viewers, can you please tell them
Yeah.
what you do?
Sure. So I have the wonderful privilege of serving people as a sexual wellness educator. So what I do is I coach, I educate, and I speak on all things sexual wellness. That's a little bit different than what average we usually hear, like sex education or sex health. It's just a slight difference. So sex education is usually K through 12, kind of whether it's comprehensive or abstinence based. And while I do teach on those subjects, that's not the extent of what I do. And then sexual health is usually more around preventative health measures, reducing things like sexually transmitted infections, preventing pregnancy, and things like that. And so while I do that as well, that's not the extent. A lot of what I do is really around the journey of wellness and understanding sexuality as a cradle to grave health wellness journey. And that's something that's really important for us all to understand, because I think once we start understanding that, the crux of my work is around kind of releasing the shame and guilt and societal pressures that we get, and the perversions that we get around sex and sexuality through the years. It takes all of that away when you understand it as a wellness journey. So That's what I do.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. And a lot of youth and adults actually need this information. And, when we were growing up, of course, like you said, sexual education was K through 12, and it wasn't really as in depth as we really needed it to be at that time. So
That's
now,
right.
with you and your knowledge and everything, I know that you are definitely giving it to them straight.
I try to. I definitely try to. And, the thing is that every state, because sex education is not a federal law or anything. And so it's not a federal mandate of the education system. And so every state doesn't have even sex education, even at the base of what we know it as. And that has changed throughout the years. Here in Louisiana, we don't have sex education in schools. And then
Wow.
at one point, even when it was in schools, it had to be abstinence only, not abstinence based, abstinence only. Which, while I totally understand, we always like to leave the morals and the ethics and things like that up to each family. Abstinence only really, as a public health issue, really hasn't been shown to work. And that's where I like to give kind of straightforward, evidence-based information. I really, when it comes down to adolescents and children, enjoy the questions that they have, answer it age appropriately, engage with the parents so that they can understand how to answer those questions age appropriately, and embed the morals and ethics that they'd like to embed within their family, because every family is different.
Wow. And yeah, you're right. I believe that that is really important. And like you said, evidence based and making sure that it is age appropriate, because these kids have some questions nowadays. So you're like, okay, what am I supposed to say now? And helping parents, get through that topic with the youth and the teens is not easy. So I
It's not.
applaud you for being able to help these parents along with their children, because it's not easy. So
It's not.
is that the same thing as a sexual wellness coach?
Yeah, so obviously I use the education of being an educator as well. I'm coaching as well as speaking and everything else, but coaching really is a practice that guides a person from where they are to where they want to be in a particular field, by using either emerging practices, proven evidence-based practices, or relying on different activities and exercises that have worked in other fields and applying them to whatever field you're working on. So when it comes down to sexuality coaching, it may look like, me working with a couple that comes in and says that they're having like kind of equal attraction issues, right? So that one person may want to be more intimate and sexually involved a little bit more often than others. Well, then that's a coaching thing, right? So I would work with them to figure out what are some of the things, some of the imbalances, what may be some of the root causes, but then really trying to get into what are some of the exercises and plans we can put in place to get to where they really want to get to.
Wow. Well, I love that. So let me ask you another question. You saying that you create the plans and everything like that. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you work with these families for some time. And how do you see the change and the progress while you're doing this? Because what you do is, like I said, it's so amazing and it's so fulfilling. And I know that these
It
families
is.
really enjoy having you in their life, because I know I would. I would be like, listen, Ms. Brown, can you please answer this question for me? So I know
Yes.
them, having them and you being in their life is just a joy. So what kind of practices do you do with the family? Say if they have like a 5-year-old kid and there's
Yeah.
questions being asked, what do you do about that?
Yeah. So let's say they have questions and they have a list of them. I say, okay, bring in the list of the questions that the child is asking, and then let's start figuring out where you feel uncomfortable with answering those questions, right? And where you feel comfortable with answering. So we go through that back and forth, and that's me and the parents. And then once we can kind of guide through there and we start figuring out what are some of the sticking blocks, a lot of times it's more about the parents not knowing themselves enough to answer the question at an
Absolutely.
age appropriate level.
Yeah.
Because, and one of the things that we do, and I don't have a scientific term for it, but we adult a lot of our thinking. And we will take a child's words and adult it. Right.
Right.
And we can't do that. We can't we can't take their words in adulthood. We can't answer
Absolutely.
as from an adult level. We have to bring it down to that 5-year-old's level.
Yeah.
And so that kind of conversation happens. So if, let's say, a child is asking, okay, where do babies come from?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep. And the parents
And
say
you're
the
like,
stork and no.
right. And then so they go into the storytelling, and the baby's
Right.
like, no, my friend just went to the doctor and got the baby. So where did they come from?
Right.
Like the stork wasn't there. What are you talking about? And so you
Exactly.
bring this, and so you then start saying, oh, so what are you asking? That's why I always say, go back to the kid and say, what are you asking?
Mm-hmm.
Allow for that child to give you context. Where did you hear this from? Where do
Wow.
you see it? Can you show me where you saw it so then maybe I can explain it to you?
I
Right? You're
love
getting
that.
context so you can answer the question. Don't get confused
Absolutely.
on trying
Yes.
to figure out birds and bees and storks and
Yeah.
deliveries, and they
That
may
just
not be
makes it a bit
asking
more
that.
difficult. It makes it a bit difficult because then when
Right.
they find out the truth, they're like, wait a minute, mom told me this, but no.
And at 5, they may not be asking all that. They're more
Right.
than likely not asking all that. At 5, they're like, where did it come from? Did it come
Right.
from the emergency room, the hospital, the doctor? Where they are very concrete at 5. So where did it come from is not the same as how did you make it, which
Right.
is how we kind of start thinking.
And
So
that is really true. And that is a good point because it is two different things.
two
You
very
know?
different things.
And we
Two
don't
very
realize
different
that. We
things.
just want to give the kid the quick answer,
Yeah. Yeah, or we dismiss them,
Yeah.
right? And that
Mm-hmm.
then starts, as a sexual wellness educator, I will always say that starts the journey of shame and guilt around sexuality.
Wow.
That starts the journey. That whole consistently dismissing them. Boy, don't talk about that. Girl, don't
Yeah.
say that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Slapping their hands when they're going into diapers, right?
Yeah. And
Telling them it's nasty. Oh, that's dirty down there. Don't do that. You're starting the shame and guilt that young.
And that is so true. And parents don't even
Yeah,
realize it. Like on one of
they
my
don't.
shows, I talked about when the little boy pushes the girl and hits her and everything, and the parents be like, "Oh, he's hitting you because he likes you," and this and
Yeah,
that. So at that young age, parents are teaching their young girls that this
that's right.
guy is gonna hit you, and that means he
That's
loves you.
right.
So they
And it's
grow up.
okay.
Right. And it's okay. So, it's really good that
Yeah.
talk, actually said what you said the way you said
Yeah.
it, because it is important for us not to shame these children when they are putting their hands in their pampers and different things like that. Is a
Right.
habit that they have sometimes. And, we can't
Well,
say,
it's
oh,
not
that's
necessarily even a
nasty.
habit. I
Yeah.
mean, we
Wow.
are, once again, from cradle to grave, we are
Right.
sexual beings, like it
Right.
or not.
Mm-hmm.
Our body naturally wants pleasure, no matter what it is. It's the reason
Right.
that we, for the most part, if you've received hugs as a good thing, you like hugs
Right.
because you're exchanging an intimate pleasure. It's not sexual, it's an
Right.
intimate pleasure. It is what it is. Once again, the whole touching thing, we're adulting it.
Mm-hmm.
They're just touching themselves, their body, their skin. They're touching, they're feeling, they're learning.
Right.
We're
Right.
adulting it to make it sexual. But
Absolutely.
they're not doing anything.
Right. They're not even having sexual thoughts. It's just
They're not.
something that they're just doing. And
They're
we're
just
saying,
doing it.
oh, that's nasty. Don't do it. You're so right about that.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to have to call you later. Okay. Listen, us adults still need that information. My kids are
Yes, ma'am.
grown and everything like that, but I do have a grandson, and you do have to, and still, hey, that's not nasty. Is a part of life. Is a part of
That's right.
your sexual.
It's your body.
Yeah, it's your
It's
body.
your body. And if you
Wow.
start there, you start teaching them autonomy. You start teaching them control over their body versus that. Once again, you start separating, you start feeding into the predator that says, don't talk about that because that's dirty. Yeah, I did it to you, but don't tell nobody.
Right.
Well, as the parent, you've already told them it's dirty. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to keep that secret. And that's not a blame game on anybody. It's a learning process. It's really understanding and undoing a lot of the shame and the guilt that has been placed upon us by society. This is not a blame game by any means, because some things you cannot stop. But what you can do is try to make the best steps possible to prevent and prepare.
Absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that advice so much. And
Yeah.
I hope that everyone that sees this
Yeah.
will understand exactly where you're coming from,
Yeah.
and start from now, because it's not too late for them
It's
to,
not.
stop blaming or shaming or anything like that to their youth.
Yep.
How long have you been changing people's lives? Because that's what you do. And I know that. Oh my goodness. It's not easy being a parent. So it's not easy
Right.
being a parent and trying to teach your youth how to accept themselves. And,
Right.
how
Right.
long have you been doing this?
Well, I have been a sexuality educator over 25 years now. I started professionally as a peer educator on my undergraduate campus. And so, but I even started before then. I started before then in an all-girls high school, realizing that I had this proclivity to understand my body when everybody else, I was living under the shame and guilt of Catholic guilt.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had to go sneak and look at books and read books and just kind of absorb it all. And in the reading and understanding, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, this is just normal. So this is how I feel, how the books are telling me this is all normal. But I keep getting all these messages from the adults in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started there talking to my friends and girlfriends in school and things like that, and explaining to them about how, our body works, and, what it'll be like when you get a cycle, and what it'll be like when you have sex for the first time, and all this kind of stuff. And,
Wow.
we would really have these conversations. And I would, if it came to something I didn't know, I'd just go back to the book and I'd find it.
Absolutely.
and come back to them.
That is smart. And I know they were probably like, girl, you better go talk to Davondra. She'll tell you.
Well, right. And it was that, or it was like, stay away from her. She crazy. She talking nonsense.
I love
And so now when they see me, they're like, oh my God, I cannot believe you knew way back then. And it's just lovely seeing you do what you've been doing for all these years. I mean, when God blesses you with something, it's no turning away from it. It's no shaking it.
You have to take it and run. And like you said, if you didn't know something, you went back to the book and you looked, and then you came back with an answer. So I'm pretty sure that's what you do now. And I know that you are so well educated on this topic, especially, doing it for over 20 years. So I really commend you on your patience, because there's a lot of questions about sexuality. And I know people are like, whoa, you probably heard some of the craziest questions ever, but was able to help people through these things,
Oh, yeah. You hear a lot. A lot of it is misinformation. A lot of it are, they're myths that people grow up with, or wives' tales that they really grow up believing. And then when you start learning the history of sexuality, you start realizing some of the craziness that happened in the name of sex. Cornflakes. If you didn't know, Kellogg, cornflakes has a connection to sex.
Really?
It was made, cornflakes were made bland to try to squelch women's sexual hysteria. So for us to not get horny, for us not to get excited and aroused, we were supposed to eat cornflakes.
That's why I didn't like those. No,
that's why I never liked them either.
I like cornflakes. and all the other sweet cereals.
Exactly.
I didn't want that crap anyway.
That's exactly what. Yeah, the craziness that's connected. The craziness that's connected.
Oh, wow, that is something. So, how has your profession helped you in your relationships or relationship right now and your family life?
Yeah, so I personally think it makes me a better communicator with both, my husband and my kids. So it allows me, one of the things that I think comes out of releasing the shame and guilt around sexuality is that you're able to have a more robust conversation and interaction with people at
Yeah.
a very intimate level. That's even non-sexually.
Right.
Because I don't have a lot of sexual shame and guilt, I put myself out there. Like I told you, I'm pretty transparent, sometimes at the embarrassment of my husband. But for me,
That's cute. I love it. Hey,
for me,
sometimes
I'm
we got
just
to do
like,
that in order to keep it in check.
right. They're gonna ask, babe. I gotta tell them. Like, you don't have to tell them. You really don't. I'm like, all right, good.
I
Good.
love
I probably
it.
don't.
Oh, that's funny.
But it helps me have more intimate relationships, and that's been a journey. That's not always been that, because let me tell you, it's been a battle of trying to soften the Catholic guilt and be who I am and who I believe God destined me to be, which was this kind of voice for the voiceless of people's sexuality.
Right.
But what has happened is it really does allow for you to have a better relationship. I know you probably heard people say, "Oh yeah, you don't get into good sex until you're over 50." Well, half the reason is because you don't care by the time you're 50. You don't have so many inhibitions. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
by the time you're just like, you think what of me? I don't care. You think I said something crazy? I don't care. And
Yeah.
that's the reason why people start having better sex in their older years, because they don't care. They don't have
Communication
as
better
many
and
inhibitions.
yeah. And then,
That's right.
when you're younger, you don't even really know what you want,
That's
and
right.
so as you get older and you start experiencing, you're like, okay, I don't want that. I do want this. I don't want that. And like you said, when you get older, you're just like, hey, look, this is me. Take me.
This is me. Take
Yeah,
me or leave me. That's it.
absolutely. I
That's
love
it.
that.
And the thing is that we could have that younger, right? And I've been blessed to be able to have that younger, but we have to prepare adolescents, children, young adults. We have to prepare them for those decisions on an integral basis, right? It can't be, oh, you're 18, here's the information and go sow your wild oats.
Right.
Oh, you're 21, here, go do this. It just doesn't work like that. That's what you're spending all of that next 25, 30 years trying to undo before you have good sex again.
Right.
Because you've been left to the wolves.
Yep.
I tell people all the time, if we taught someone or a child how to swim the way we teach sex education, they'd all drown.
Yeah, they were all drowned.
They'd all drown.
Yep. And if
maybe
you
one or two that are natural fish that are like, let me get to the.
Yes.
But why do you think we have so many sexual problems? Why do you think we have so many divorces? Why do you think we have so many, sexual assaults and things like that? Because we're not prepared the way that we should to thwart some of that. There's not enough of positive sexuality information in the world to counteract all the negative, crazy, perverted nonsense that we get.
I agree 100%. And you know what? It's so funny. I never thought about it that way. You know what I mean? I never thought about these sexual perverts and this and that, doing these things because of lack of sexual education.
Some of them, right? Some of them. I'm not saying that it's going to stop everybody, because some monsters are monsters.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying that, but there are some that are acting out aggressions that they haven't been able to deal with.
Wow. Yep. And like you said, some of them, not all of them, but
not all of them.
Yeah, that is so true. That's just like amazing for you to even, for you to allow me to think about these things, So, and like I said, us as adults, we're still going to be learning from you, So I know the adults that come to you, have their eyes open and be like, wow, I didn't really think about it that way.
That's right. That's right. And that's all. And that's the reason why I retain Educator, because I truly believe that I'm an educator. I'm a facilitator of education, thought, growth, mental growth of how we live this life as a sexual being. Like, it's not about me espousing all of my knowledge upon somebody. That's not what it's about. It's not about me being the expert and the guru.
Right.
it's about me saying, hey, have you thought about it like this? Or did you think about it if we turn the tides about this? Did you get a different perception or a different angle if I ask this question? It's
Right.
really about that. And it's really about just kind of, if I give you the education, now what are you going to do with it? Right?
Right.
How are you going to apply it? What other things do you need to apply it? Right? I can't
Right.
just give you something and don't give you the tools to be able to do something with it.
Absolutely. And in
Right.
my profession, I call it my toolkit, and
That's
it's
right.
true because if you're teaching somebody something or even telling them anything, you can't just tell them and then send them on their way, like you said, you have to give them the tools to follow up with, what's
Yeah.
going on. So what made you, I know we spoke a little earlier about, you telling your girlfriends, after you finish reading out of a book, some information about sexuality and how you get your period and everything like that. So what is that one of the things that made you want to become a sex and wellness coach?
I think one of the things that really made me become a coach was, like I said, first off, I believe that it's embedded in me. God planted the seed, and it's just who I need to be. When I got out of undergrad and I was making my way through grad school, I decided to be an adult toy party lady, right? So I was one of those
Oh,
kind of,
yes, I had
I
a
was one
couple
of
of
those.
those.
Yeah. So I did that. It's like, okay, you know what? That's a way that I can kind of be in sexuality field. And once
Yes,
again, like I said, was still battling that one foot into, not being sexuality based and the other
yes,
foot into, no, this is what I need to do. So
yes.
I kept the day job kind of thing and then did that at the evenings on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
And and so what I realized though, first of all, I was making money hand over fist.
Uh-huh.
So everybody wanted these toys, but then secondly, I started realizing after about a year in the business, God, I'm spending so much of time with
Mhm.
these ladies while I'm doing orders, and it's not because they're ordering so much; it's because I'm coaching them. This
Ah,
was before coaching was a true profession
right.
out in the world for everybody to say they were a coach. I
Yes.
realized like that's what's taken me so long. I'm sitting with them, I'm educating not only on the
Wow.
product, I'm
Right.
educating how do they introduce the product to their lover? How do they
Uh-huh.
have the conversations? How do they communicate?
Wow.
Where is their clitoris?
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
we are literally, I am drawing pictures and doing flow charts of bodies. And
Diagram.
I'm like,
Oh.
I was like, okay, so this is where I am with grown women. I mean, mind you, at this time I was 24, 25 maybe. And I'm talking, to women after church on Sunday. We talking, 50, 60,
Mhm.
45. Like, so they're like, oh my God, how do you know all this? Well, I've been
Okay.
at this for a little bit.
I'm reading and studying. I'm reading and
I'm reading
studying.
stuff, right? And
Mhm.
so then it was that, right? And then it's kind of
Wow.
fighting that whole thing of, oh well, you must be been doing this. And I was like, well, I've been learning it. I don't have to do it or to know it. And so even just having those kind of misconceptions out of their head, like, oh well, you must do it all. Well, I talk about it all. I sell it all.
Right.
I'll teach on it all. I'll educate on it all, but I don't do it all. That's the whole point is
Right.
you make your decision for what's good for you. You don't have to do it all either.
Right.
Or if you do it once, doesn't mean you have to do it again. And it's all those, it's the permissions and all of those things. It's the having the conversation to say, oh, I can do that and not feel like I'm a bad person. Oh, I can, engage in this kind of activity and then not feel like I'm the scum of the earth.
Dirty. Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that. I really do because
Yeah,
people, sexuality, sex, and everything is just a natural thing. And if
it
you want
is.
to experiment and do whatever you want to do, and if you don't like it, don't try it again. But it's not a dirty thing. And a lot of people look at it as if it's a dirty thing, but it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and look at what we have as our teachers. We have most of
Oh,
the time
mm,
pornography
yeah.
or some, old dirty uncle that decided to do craziness to us or show us stuff. Or,
Yes.
like when I can
Over
remember
it.
being in middle school and, the little boy next to me, like, look, and I turn around and he's got his penis out. And, it's that
Absolutely.
kind of stuff. So if that's the kind of in way that we engage in sex and sexuality,
Yeah.
then of course, then we feel dirty and shamed and, oh my
Right.
God, I don't want to do it. So like I say,
Hmm.
it's a lot of undoing that shame and guilt that we work on and replacing it, right? There's a whole movement right now with ethical pornography
Yeah.
that is a lot, softer and from a different point of view than the perverted, the overly, misogynistic and male dominated pornography filmmaking that we've known for all these
Right.
years. So look into that. Look into educational pornography if that's something that you want to look into. Erotic literature is another way to go for you to get some kind of feel for things that you may want to get into and try, but that you're not really willing to look at it on camera or something like that. So there's
Right.
all kinds of things like that we can dive into. And so a lot of the coaching that I do is all about permission giving, undoing the wrongs that have been done to us by society, and kind
Hmm.
of replacing that with a healthy relationship with sexuality.
Wow, that is what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Summed up in a
Yeah.
nutshell, right? I love it. So I know that when you're coaching families, what are some of like the common problems or issues in the relationship or in the family structure that you see a lot within these families?
Yeah, for the most part. So a lot of times people will come to me, like if it's couples, right? They'll come to me where, like I said earlier, one person wants it a little bit more than the other, or they're going through some type of emotional patch or even a medical patch and trying to figure out what that looks like. I get a good bit of clients around pleasure post trauma. So I really like working with those people that say, that have gone through either some type of sexual trauma or medical trauma, and are now trying to figure out how they become pleasurable, how they can get their good, healthy sexuality either back or create it because they never had it. So those are a lot of the ways that I kind of work with couples and singles. Now, when it comes down to a family dynamic where there's children and parents involved, or a single parent and a child or something like that, for the
Mhm.
most part, it is a lot around trying to raise a child in a healthy and age appropriate manner.
Yeah.
A lot of de-blaming, right, on both
Oh,
parts,
I love
because
that. Mhm.
parents do a lot of, you shouldn't be doing this, or you must have done this, and you nasty because you didn't did this, or I don't
Right.
need you pregnant, so you about to get on the pill, and all of these
Right.
kinds of negative type of stories, when
Yeah.
sometimes the children like, I really just want to know, like that's all I want to do. I just
Absolutely.
want to understand what the heck you're talking about, or what
Yes.
they're talking about, because I saw a movie and they told a joke, and while I get it that it's about sex and sexuality, I have no idea what the heck they're talking about. So
Right.
what does that mean?
Right.
And so kind of undoing a lot, like I said, once again, undoing a lot of the things that have been done to us, given to us, the
Yeah.
miseducation that has been given to us. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of making sure that we don't continue this intergenerational sexual trauma that we have done in this westernized culture.
Wow, I love that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you just, oh man, I tell you,
Yeah.
I'm gonna want to call you, like I said, and be like, listen, can you answer this question for me? Even though I had the experience, I've done this, I've done that, but you are telling it really like it is, and a lot of people
Okay.
don't do that, especially the coaches in school, sex education, this and that. And I don't even really see sex education anymore in the schools. They have PE, which is gym, but then
Mm-hmm.
remember, we used to have another class with that where
That's
we would
right.
go into the classroom and then, we would communicate about menstrual cycles and ovaries and all of that
Yeah,
other stuff. I don't see that anymore. And it's really not in detail the way that it should be
mm-mm.
told, you
That's
know?
right. That's exactly it.
Wow. So, how often do you see the same families? Do you coach them like for a year or 6 months, or when you feel like they've had enough experience and education from you to go ahead and move on?
Yeah, so I have coaching packages usually. And so the coaching packages are for particular targeted reasons, right, and purposes. So, like, I have one that's beyond basics. So, for a couple that may have gotten into the groove of just, doing a missionary, or maybe they have a standard 3 positions that they've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
or they are no longer really kind of engaging in this kind of heightened sexuality because kids are around and things. And so now it really has become humdrum. And so we talk about how do you get beyond basic with your sexuality. We have one that's from sexless to satisfied. And so for marriages that have gone for, at least 10 weeks without having sex, how do they re-engage? How do they reconnect? How do we get them to a point where they have enough of tools in their tool chest that they do not get back to being sexless, and get them to that understanding of satisfaction for both of them. So those types of packages, they may run from a 1-month package, depending on what it is that we're talking about, to a 6-month package.
Wow.
I usually don't see a couple any longer than 6 months, because if that's the case, if we've gotten to the point that we're 6 months and we still haven't figured this out, then more than likely you need either therapy or a good attorney.
Wow, I think that is true.
And that's, and that's not a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing.
No, it's
Sometimes it
not.
just is what it is, and that's where the two of you have found each other. That the season has passed for the two of you to be together, or that you really do need more psychotherapy, because what coaches don't do is psychoanalyze. So we don't get into the nitty-gritty of why something happened, or the unpacking of the trauma that might have happened. We don't do that. And so whenever somebody comes to me, and I always ask, and we do a full, thorough kind of assessment of, have you had trauma? Have you dealt with the trauma? Do you understand any triggers that you may have from that trauma? So then that way we can avoid any of those triggers. And if they say they haven't dealt with it, then I send them to a therapist before they come to me, or I work in tandem with the therapist to make sure that those issues are addressed in the proper manner.
Wow, that is really good and enlightening. That is beautiful, because sometimes people do come to, a sex coach or whatever, and think that it could be fixed just with that, not even understanding the past has a lot to do with what you're going through, at the moment. You are something else. And if anybody is looking to find you, please tell me, where can they find you?
Oh, sure. So find me on my website, davondrabrown.com. So that's DAVONDRA Brown.com. Or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Dibs on Sex. That's DIBS. So my company's name is Davondra I. Brown Services. And so that's where DIBS comes on, DIBS on Sex. That's Instagram and Facebook. And then you can probably find me on LinkedIn and Twitter just at Davondra Brown. I just don't use those as much, so I can't remember.
Okay. That's okay, because I can't either. So I just say, hey, contact me at thelovemanual.com. And, everybody knows that that's where they could reach me. They can reach me on Facebook, facebook.com/the Love Manual page. And, if they find me on those pages, then that's where, they'll link up to me on other platforms. But you are a joy to have on a show. I so appreciate you, giving us some tips and advice about how to talk to these youth and these young adults, and the adults as well, because it's not easy. And I applaud you for what you do, like I said, and I commend you for having so much patience to deal with this topic, because it's really serious and it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not. It's been a long, hard journey. I mean, I started this when, sex was still very much a dirty word. At least now, we have help with, people like Nicki Minaj, and we've gone through we got that WAP out there now, so we can get
Absolutely. So
we get
now,
some help. We have the Me Too movement that has come about. We have a better understanding of what it
uh-huh.
looks like to understand rape culture and how
Yeah.
things are, indoctrinated, colonized into us, and things like that. So
Yeah.
I have a little bit of help, a little bit more substance now
Yes.
behind it. There's a lot more avenues into becoming a sexuality educator or even any type of sexuality professional. There's a lot more degree programs in that. There's
Yeah.
coaching programs and things like that. Eventually, I'll create a coaching program myself. I'm just not on
Uh-huh.
that yet.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
know you're
we.
going to do it. I already know. I can see it. I hear it.
Oh, thank you. But we have a
Wow.
bunch of different avenues. So I have a lot more help, and it's a little bit easier now, but it's still a
Yes.
very, very hard journey to help people understand that this is not
Mm.
anything that's perverted or cruel. It really is something that, is God ordained. It's given to us. And we
Yeah.
just need to do whatever we feel is right with that, and
Yeah.
that's not for anybody else to dictate. It really isn't.
Absolutely. Well, I love
Yeah.
that you summed that up, and I would love to have you on a show again. So, I want to
Thank
thank you
you.
again for even joining me at the Love Manual, and
Yeah.
it was a pleasure, Davondra.
Thank you so much. Well, I will accept that invite in advance. So let's just go ahead and figure out calendars and things like that. And we'll see each other
Absolutely.
sometime in the new year.
Oh, we sure will. Thank you so much for all of your tips and advice, like I said. And please enjoy the rest of your night. And,
Thanks.
go ahead and share some of that with your family. Again, but
Oh,
don't
they get
embarrass your
they get
husband.
all the they get all the goodness. Husband and son, they both be like, "Oh Lord, there
Here
she
we go
goes." Yeah,
again, right?
yeah.
Like,
My daughter is the one that's like, "Hey, mommy, what we gonna talk about tonight?" And she's 5 and she's
oh,
ready. What are you talking about? What's this? No, ma'am, this is my fault, but you cannot touch it. She'll tell you that in a minute. And I'm like,
listen,
yes, yes,
she's going to
yes.
be a mini you.
Body autonomy. I like it.
Yes,
I
I
like
love
it.
it too. Thank you
Yes.
so much again. I appreciate you.
I
Bye,
appreciate you as well. Thank you
Divine.
for what you do.
Oh, thank you for what you do, okay?
All righty.
Enjoy
Good
your
night.
evening. Good night.
Thanks.
Oh,
Bye.
she's a sweetheart. I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining me at the Love Manual. I'm Mel, your host, like I said. And if you want to reach us, please contact us at thelovemanual.com. And please, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/, the Love Manual page. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you to